Hello, my name is Greg, and I'd like to welcome you to the GNS3 version 1.3.2 installation and configuration video. In this video, I will discuss how I install and configure GNS3, in particular to add iOS, IOU, and ASA devices. There are other devices that GNS3 is capable of, but for the purposes of this video, that's what I do. That's what I use, I should say. Um, so one thing I'd like to mention, between the last version, which was version 1.3.1, and this version, there were a lot of bug fixes and features added. But one bug that in particular that I mentioned in the last video of 1.3.1 that got fixed, or at least it seems it's fixed now, is the idle PC um, setting that you can do after creating an iOS router and modifying it on the topology screen, which you'll see in a minute. Um, the way that I'm going to show you is the way I normally do it, which is during the installation of the iOS router. But now you can either do it either way. It seems that it's working now. Um, So other thing I wanted to mention is that Wireshark that comes with this distribution is still at 1.12.1 if you install it from GNS3. I recommend going to Google and Google Wireshark and download the latest one. As of this video, it's still 1.12.4. Again, GNS3 installs 1.12.1, so you'll want to get that and install it prior to doing this. And then you just uncheck that as we're installing GNS3, as you'll see in a minute. Okay, so without further ado, I'll go ahead and bring up the setup for GNS3 1.3.2. So for this, we'll go ahead and click Next. I agree to the license. GNS3 start menu is fine. Hit Next. And this is where we check both WinPCAP and Wireshark, because WinPCAP gets installed with Wireshark, and as you can see, that was the 1.12.1 I mentioned. So go and hit Next. Everything's fine there, so we'll go ahead and hit install, and it's going to download the SolarWinds response time viewer, which takes about a minute to download, sometimes faster than others. Um, just depends on who's surfing right now. That'll be a good time to mention that I do not provide any locations for any iOS, IOU, or ASA images, as well as any licenses or keys for the ASA. For that, you need to contact Cisco, and they'll be more than happy to help you get that um, uh, loaded up in your GNS3 for you, or at least show you where you can get the images to do that. So right here, you could put your email address for this video. I'll put GNS3 at gns3.com and hit continue, and then we hit next. I accept the terms of the license. Next. And that's fine. Next. And it seems to hang here. You'll see I'm not responding right here in a second. There it is. and then it'll change to another screen. Hit next to that, and then it installs. This is the longest portion um, of the GNS3 installation. And after this is done installing, you'll actually load up the response time viewer here in a second. Okay, we go ahead and finish to that. And then GNS3 loads up. So go and close this. Wait for GNS3 to finish installing. Okay, there's our desktop icon. Go and hit next to that. If you haven't already loaded this or downloaded this, SolarWinds is offering right now for free $200 value this for this SolarWinds standard tool set. Has a lot of cool features and tools that you can get for free. If you haven't already downloaded it, I would go ahead and download it. Wouldn't hurt since it's free. I've already done that, so I'm going to hit no. But if you want it, hit yes and then click next. It will take you to their website at some point after the installation, and you can register for a free copy of it. So we'll go ahead and hit next, and then we'll go ahead and start GNS3. We'll finish and let that start. So the first thing it's going to do is load up the GNS3 jungle, which is GNS3's main page where you download GNS3. Obviously, you've been there before, otherwise you wouldn't have this distribution. So um, once it first starts, it brings up this splash screen. From here, you can also go to GNS3 Jungle. You can report a bug if you find one. You can check out the blogs, check out the documentation and user groups. If you don't check this, it will open up every time. Most people know where all this is at, so they usually check this. Hit close, and that starts up GNS3. Um, since we don't have any devices loaded, we'll go ahead and hit cancel to um, creating a new project. If you want to create one once you do have them loaded, you just type in a name and it will put it in the path of the project folder. This is going to be changed in a minute, as you'll see. So we'll go ahead and cancel, minimize this, and go full screen on this. Alright, so let's go ahead and add in our devices, and then I'll show you around GNS3. So you go to Edit, Preferences, and let's change the paths. One thing I will show you is I created this folder out on the C drive, and I call it GNS3. And in here I have all my documentation, my images for the iOS and IOU and ASA are on here. The iOS and IOU images are in here, which you'll see it gets pointed to that as we go along. The QEMU folder is where the ASA files get added. This flash is a flash hard drive file that gets created from the QEMU program folder structure under the GNS3 folder in C program files. If you Google creation of ASA flash for QEMU, there's some people that have created some YouTube files for creating that. I'm not going to show you how to create that, but if you Google that, they'll show you how to do that. So going back to here, this is our IOURC license file that gets loaded in two places. One place is in GNS3, the other is in this IOU VM. You want to make sure that you have the correct VM. The number at the end tells you what version of GNS3 it is for. I think 123 it just said GNS3 IOU VM for 123 and before that version. Um, so, anyways, that's where I put everything. And then we have for layouts, that's for Super Putty. You can save your layouts there. And projects is for your project files that I mentioned you can save. So let's go ahead and add those paths into GNS3. So we browse, go to C drive, go to GNS3, and I'm going to add the project folder, select folder, and that added that path there. So we do the same for the images, GNS3 images, and select folder, and there they are. So go ahead and hit apply to that. For style, there's three styles. There's charcoal, which I like. It's because it's easier on the eyes. I feel you can use the classic, which is the original one. It loads, or legacy, which looks just like the old GNS3, which is 0.8.7. Um, I like the charcoal because after a while, all the bright white gets to your eyes. So we'll go ahead and hit apply to that, or messes up your eyes, I should say, or at least mine. Hit apply to that. Go to console applications. I usually select for my console settings for telnet connections. I select Super Putty. You can leave it as putty, but the more devices you have, the more putty windows it opens when you go to console into them. Super Putty organizes it into tabs into a single window, which is much nicer, which you'll see in a minute. So I usually set this to Super Putty. If you already have Secure CRT, you can use that. There's also other like TerraTerm and Xshell and Zoc 6 or whatever. Yeah, I usually use Super Putty because it's included with GNS3 and it's free. Um, every Some of those others are free. I know that Secure CRT is $100, but does have a lot of other cool features that Super Putty doesn't have. But we'll go ahead and use Super Putty. So once you select that, you hit set. Um, then we'll go to topology view. I usually check this draw a rectangle when an item is selected. Um, it it makes it easier to see what's selected when you do that. So I go and hit apply to that. Um, for server, the only thing I do in here is I check this box to allow console connections to any local IP address. So that's for our local server, which is our loopback address. So any of our local NICs can talk to GNS3 devices via cloud, or um, also these remote servers you can talk to. Um, the remote server for the VM is this 192.168.56.101, which is a Virtualbox IP address, and this is the port it uses. To add it, we just go ahead and click add, and then we hit apply, and that adds this host into GNS3 along with the port for this remote server host. So Packet capture, I don't usually do anything under there. VPCS, I don't usually do anything under here. This is virtual PCs that you can add to your topology, but I usually use a router because to me it seems more versatile. You could do IPv6, which I'm not 100% whether VPCS can do that or not. I know VPCS can only ping and do trace routes. I know routers can do much more, so I usually do use a router. Um, um, and the way you do that is you go into global configuration mode. You type no IP routing to turn off routing. You add a gateway by using the IP default dash gateway, and then add a IP address for the gateway you're going to connect that to. And then you go into an interface that you're going to use to connect to the router and give it an IP on that subnet. And basically, it turns that router into a PC. But like I said, it has a lot more features in a router that you can use. So we'll go to Dynamips. Dynamips, pretty much in here, I don't usually do anything, or at least I don't change anything. Um, in future videos, I may do some changes, but right now we'll leave that alone. iOS routers. This is where you add in your iOS routers in the new GNS3, and the way you do that is you go to New. You hit Browse, and that takes you to that Images iOS folder that I showed you earlier. And from here, you could select your iOS platform you want to load. Um, One thing to keep in mind, if you want to use IPv6, you want to make sure that your images end with a T and a number. That way it can use IPv6. So let's go ahead and load a 2600 router, and we go ahead and hit next. For name and platform, I usually don't change anything. That gets auto-populated. For chassis, I change to a 2651XM, but there are other ones in here you can use. I usually don't check this. This is an ether switch router. Just because I like to have this as a baseline. You can always make changes to it later. So let's go ahead and hit next. This is the default RAM that gets populated by GNS3 for the particular image that you are loading. If you're not sure if this is the correct RAM, or you want to make sure it is the correct RAM, if you click right here, it'll open up this Cisco Feature Navigator. Once you're in there, you click image name, and then you paste in the image name as it shows right here, but instead of .image, you want to make sure it says .bin. And it will show you down here the information after you hit enter for the memory that requirements for that particular image. So let's go ahead and close out of that. So that looks good. We'll hit next. From here, there's the different slot types for network adapters. Slot 0, some of them like to change between different settings for different network adapters for the slot 0. This one only has this type, which is a 2 fast Ethernet. I usually don't add anything here, but you can. You can add that Ethernet switch module or other Ethernet ports or fast Ethernet if you wish. I usually leave those blank because, like I say, you can change that later, and I'll show you where you could do that. So we go ahead next. I do add a WIC 2T, which gives it 2 serial connections, which you normally want for a router, and go and hit next. This is the idle PC finder that I mentioned earlier. In the older version, this is the only place you can set this. This is so that when you have um, a router loaded and it's booted up, that um, it finds the best processor value that uses the least amount of processor utilization. Right now it's showing about 15, but as soon as you run this, it actually runs an image of the router and then finds, let me bring that back. As you can see, it's going up. It's searching for the very best one, and when it does, it will drop down and it will show you the best one it found for this image. And it takes about 20-30 seconds. So we'll wait a second. And as you can see, it went down to 10, 11, 10 to 13. And it's because it found this value. So go ahead and hit OK to that. I'll show you where you can also change it now where you couldn't in the last version. So go ahead and hit finish to that. Let's go ahead and do that right now while I'm thinking of it. So you hit apply, hit OK, and basically right here is where all your routers, and right here is where all your switches, your end devices, and your security devices are. But if you click this, this shows all the devices in one quick and easy setting, or view, I should say. So if you drag a router to the topology screen, right click on it. If you go into configure and then click the R1 or whatever the name is, and then go into advanced, this will show you that idle PC value. If you click slots, this will show you where you can go ahead and modify those right here. This just shows the baseline settings that we put earlier, but you can modify it once it's on the topology. Let me go back out here. So if you right click and go to idle PC, this will also let you set the idle PC. On the previous version 1.3.1, you didn't want to do it here because it actually wiped it out, whatever you added when you first installed the router into the preferences, and left it blank. So every time you loaded a router, it used a lot of your processor. So now it seems to work here. If it doesn't for some reason or you have any problems, I would just go back in, and I'll show you right now. Go back into preferences, go back to your iOS routers, hit delete, and then re-add it back in and rerun that idle PC from there. So that's pretty much it for iOS routers. So let's go and install iOS on Unix, which is known as IOU. So the only thing we do in here is we add the IOURC license file. So we go browse, and that's in the C GNS3 images folder, and I keep it in the root of there. That's this IOURC, so that you let that put the path there, so it gets added there and also into Virtualbox, as you'll see in a minute. So go ahead and hit apply to that. So now let's go ahead and load up our VM in Virtualbox. Okay, so we go to File, Import, browse to the GNS3 folder under C root, go into Images, and then again make sure this is the correct version of the IOU VM. For this version it's 1.3.2, so we'll go ahead and double click on that, hit next, import. You don't do anything in there. It imports it into Virtualbox, and then we'll start it in a second. Now once you start um, the VM, the only thing you got to change is your NIC settings, which you'll see it will come up with a little message. So go and start that, and then it'll load this, and then you hit change network settings, and the only thing you do is hit OK, and that's it. It loads up the image. The only other thing I do is it'll put up a little window here in a second. I usually close this, and then it will show you that the instructions on what you got to do to upload your IOU images into this VM. And basically what you do is you put this path right here into your web browser. Firefox seems to do the best job for this, but I've done it in IE before. But I had some quirky moments with IE, so Firefox seems to work the best for me. So for now, let's minimize this. Keep in mind that this needs to be up and running at all times if you want to add and use IOU devices, as you'll see here in a minute. So let's go ahead and minimize that. And then we'll go into our browser, and from here we go to that path, which is 192.168.168.56.101 colon 8000 forward slash upload. And from here we hit this drop down on file type, click IOU license, IOURC, browse to where that's at, and that was in the images root. Select that, hit open, and upload it into the VM. So now it's in the VM. So we also want to add our IOU images. So we browse, go into iOS, and our IOU images start with an i86bi-Linux, and then -L2 for layer 2 and L3 for layer 3. So we'll go ahead and hit layer 2 first, and go ahead and upload it, and then I'll put it down here. Okay, we'll go ahead and copy that because I'll show you need that in a second. And then we browse, do the same for L3, open, upload, and then it'll add that in here. It takes about 2 to 3 times longer than the L2 because it's about 2 to 3 times bigger than L2 as far as the image file goes. While we're waiting for that, let's go on into GNS3 and go into the IOU devices, click new, next, OK, and you want to make sure this file type is for the one you're loading. Right now we're doing L2, but there's also L3, so let's paste in that image path, the IOU image path inside the VM, and then I type IOU underscore switch and hit finish and apply. And then let's go back to our browser and do the same for L3. So we copy that, go back to GNS3, go new, go next, OK, L3, paste the path in, and then I put IOU underscore router. You can put whatever you want, but I usually put IOU underscore switch or router because it makes it easier to distinguish between an iOS and IOU router, as you'll see in a minute. So we go in and hit apply to that, and so that added in the IOU devices. So the last one we want to do is the ASA. So that's under QEMU VMs, and we go and hit new, select our type, which is the ASA 4.4.2, type, hit next and leave that, next, next, all the way to here, hit browse, and that brings us into the images QEMU folder that has our ASA files. So we'll select that for our initial RAM disk, and then we'll select our kernel image, which is this, and hit finish, and then edit. And then I go into advanced settings, and I usually uncheck this activate CPU throttling. You can go into network and modify again how many adapters you want it to have. But keep in mind it uses more CPU utilization the more adapters you have. Then we go into hard drive and we want to add our flash file. And again, you could get that by creating it in your QEMU program that's included with the GNS3 program. And again, if you Google to create ASA QEMU flash file, it will show you a lot of videos that people have created to show you how to create that. So we'll go and hit open and hit OK and apply, and now we have all of our devices installed. So we'll go and hit OK, open up all devices again, and there they all are. So we got our ASA, the router, which I already showed you right here, the IOU router, and the IOU switch. So let's go ahead and bring up the router, the 2600 router first. Remember, once you add it to the topology screen, which is this one right here, it also adds over here a summary showing all the devices and its current state. Right now it's red because it's stopped, and that's this right here. Yellow is to suspend or pause it, if which I never really use. Most of the time I only use start or stop, and this is how you start it. So go ahead and start it, and this will change to green, and it's now running. We'll go ahead and click the console button right here, which will load Super Putty. And while it's loading, I'll mention also down here is this console window, which gives status on Dynamips. Like if there's an error in Dynamips, it may show up in red down here, or some kind of error, it may show up down here. Also, when you go to save your project, it will show that it's saving the configs down here for your project. Down here it'll show a line saying that it's saving that project and the path of where it's at. So it looks like our router is fully loaded. Let's go ahead and hit OK, or enter I should say, and there we go. So we got our router. One other thing you got to configure, and that's in Super Putty, is the settings. If you don't set your Super Putty settings up right, I should say, it will come up in its default state. So like for instance, if you like it to go full screen like this, you'll want to make sure you set your paths for Super Putty. And the way to do that is go to Tools, Options, and if you right now it doesn't have any path information. It just shows Putty exe, which could be any version of that in a path. So the way to add this in, you just browse. You want to make sure you go to the C program files, GNS3, which for that one it adds it. Go ahead and hit open, and it puts it in there. Then you want to copy this, and also put this down here. You don't need to put Putty, just the settings folder for their path. If you don't have those, which are required, it won't let you make changes in here. or at least it won't save them. So you click this one if you want to restrict floating windows, and what that is restrict floating putty windows, because you can accidentally disengage a tab and it will turn into a putty window, and you can drag it back up and put it up there to put it be a tab again. But if you check this, it kind of restricts that. There are other settings you can do, but that's the only thing I set in here. Like you could change your fonts and other things as well. There are shortcuts, but you got to be careful because it may conflict with any other keyboard shortcuts that you are currently using. So whatever you set for it, you want to make sure it doesn't conflict. To do that, you just click Edit and then enter the keystroke. Um, and the only other thing I do is I check this Restore Window Size and Location. That, like I said, if you want to come up full screen, you can. Um, and if not, um, you can. Oh, you know what? That's the first time I've done that. So go to Browse. That was a little error in Super Putty. I think for this settings folder, it wants you to browse to it. So you go Browse to see, go to Program Files, go to GNS and select GNS3 and hit OK, and then it will let you save it. Otherwise, it doesn't let you save it. So there we go. So that's how setting up Super Putty works and how the router works. So let's go and close out of that. Stop that and delete that router. Say yes to that. And let's go ahead and bring up before we do that, one thing you may want to do, and I didn't do, is close out of GNS3. Disregard. And I'll go and close out of this. I don't need this anymore. Close out of this. The reason for that is if you don't do that, sometimes after you install stuff in preferences or make changes in preferences, it could cause errors. So go ahead and cancel that. We'll bring these back up. So let's go ahead and bring up our IOU router and switch. And let's go ahead and run those. Go into Super Putty. So here's our router, and let me go back up here in a second. Here's our router, and here's our switch. Okay. So if you go up on the router, which is IOU1, it will show you. You can also do show ver to see this if you want to see it. It will show you that it's a Linux image, and it'll show you the device or the interface types. So there's 8 Ethernet and 8 serial by default. They get loaded for this. Let me do a show ver so you can see the. And as you can see, it is this i86BI Linux Adventerprise 9-M version 15.4. So I'm running 15.4 in IOU. And IOU2 for the switch over. I'm running 15.1, and it's also a Linux image. So basically that's it for IOU. One thing I will say is and I may be putting a bug in for it, is that if you want to connect an IOU router to an iOS router by serial, you sometimes get an error. Let me show you that real quick. Bring this up. I may have to turn them off, but let's try this. Sometimes get this error right here. Um, I'm trying to work with GNS3. I may be putting in a bug for this. If you try to connect an IOU by router to a iOS router, um, you get this error. But we'll go and say no to that right now. Um, but like I said, be looking for that bug um, right up, and hopefully that'll be fixed in the next version, whatever that bug is. So I'll go ahead and hit. And the reason I found that is because iOS serial defaults to, I believe, DTE and IOU to DCE. So if you want to emulate clocking between two devices, you have to use an IOU and a iOS router. Um, I did find that if you go into edit preferences and go back into server and you change this to this 192.168.56.1, it will work, but then you don't have your default one loopback address loaded as the local server. You have the same IP address as this remote server, which is the 192.168.56.10, or actually .1. It's not the same IP, but it's the same type structure. So, which I don't know if will cause other issues in GNS3, but it'd be nice if we could leave it as the default local server. But anyway, so that's how that works. So let's go ahead and hit stop to that, close these, and delete these. Alright, so the last one I want to show you is the ASA. And that's the one that takes the longest. So we'll go and start that. Start Super Putty. In a second here, it will show that it's initializing the flash that we just added. I believe the second time you load it, it doesn't do that. I think it's right after this next section right here. Okay, there it is. Initializing partition HDA1. Okay. Still loading. Okay. So now it's fully booted. To go into the ASA, you just enable like you would on a router or switch. No password. And from here, you go config T, and you say, I mean, you could say yes if you want, but I usually hit no. And then from here, once you get your keys from Cisco, you paste them in here, and after you've pasted them in, it'll ask you to confirm each key. After you've pasted all your keys in, you exit, do a cop rs or write mem, and it'll save it to the running config, and then from there you reload, and it will load up your keys. If you don't do that, this effectively is not a secure device, or at least it's not acting as its native ASA functionality. So If you come up here, this shows right here that we do not have a key loaded. I'm not going to show you how to load a key because then you'll know what my key is. But basically, once you get a key from Cisco, like I said, you just paste it in. This will change to the key that you paste in. Depending on what you paid for and when you purchase your key, it will this may say active active, and these will go enabled on some of them or all of them depending on which key you get to paste in. Once you have that, then your keys are loaded and you're ready to connect it to network devices, your routers, and in your topology. Um, Once you have that, you have your keys loaded. You can save your startup config to your flash if you wish, to save your keys. But I recommend after you've loaded your keys, either before or after, save it as a project called ASA with keys loaded, and it will save those keys in there for you. If you don't do that, every time you go to load a new ASA, you have to reload your keys. So just keep that in mind. If you have a project with just an ASA or a couple ASAs with keys loaded, you can use that as a template, to where you can open it up, save it as a different project, add in other network devices, and wire it up to the ASA. So that way, you'll always have your keys loaded. You won't have to go back through this process, because it does take about 23 minutes after you reload it for it to unpack your keys and load it up into the ASA. So from there you can do a copy, start flash, and it will save your startup config to your flash. So when you go DRR, you'll see that it loaded this your startup config in here as well. So other than that, that's pretty much all I have to show you. So I'll go ahead and stop this. But thank you for watching. I hope this has been helpful. If so, please comment down below. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Other than that, I hope you have a good time playing with GNS3. Take care. We'll see ya. Bye.